Moscow's greatest enemy is no longer on the battlefield. It's inside the Kremlin itself. Putin's inner circle is being hunted by his own secret police. The Federal Security Service, the FSB, has begun arresting Russia's governors, its generals, and its ministers. These men once directed the war. Now they are dragged into the same jails that they once commanded. Vice governors in Belgorod, Kursk, Tambov are being charged with stealing money meant to defend Russia's borders. Billions have vanished while trenches collapse. At the same time, Ukrainian drones are entering Russian airspace. Each arrest removes another piece of Putin's power structure. The security service that he built to protect him is now dismantling his regime. The FSB is seizing control of the courts, the prisons, and the ministries. For the first time since the Soviet Union's collapse, Russia's rulers fear their own enforcers. Today, we see that the war that began in Ukraine has reached Moscow's walls. And the question no one dares to ask, but now is unavoidable, is who today really rules Russia? My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kiev Post and a national security advisor. The situation within Russia is complex, and over the last few days, we've been looking at this power dynamic, how the FSB is seemingly taking control of the country. And what's incredible about it is that as a civil war wages within the Kremlin, the international press almost never talks about it. That's why this channel exists, to bring the truth of what's happening inside of Russia to the world, but also the truth of what's happening here, where I am, in Kiev, Ukraine. So please help me to reach our goal for this channel of 250,000 subscribers. We're so very close. Please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with others. And you can also consider becoming a channel member today. But also one last thing. We are so incredibly close to reaching our goal of 50,000 euros raised for life-saving drones for the Ukrainian soldiers. So please do also see the first pinned comment where I have details of how you can donate there. Right now, thanks to a very generous donor, all donations are being matched. Thank you. So let's take a dive at this. Let's take a look at exactly what is transpiring and why it matters so much. So first we have to understand, in Moscow's courts, the scale of this purge is becoming increasingly clear. Look at the vice governor, Rustem Zhonyonin. He's from Belgorod. Well, he's been detained. He's accused of embezzling about $12 million. This money was stolen from the defense contractors that were supposed to provide the security on the border. As you recall, Belgorod, it was invaded by the Ukrainians last year. But that's why today there's more problems on the border. Look in Kursk, also invaded by the Ukrainians. The former governor, Alexei Smirnov, and his deputy, Alexei Dodov, they were charged with the same crime. In addition to that, they got kickbacks of about 15% for every trench and every anti-tank barrier that was built. But inside the Ministry of Defense itself, we see that the destruction there is total. We see that the old guard has been totally destroyed. Look at former Defense Minister Shoigu. He was obviously fired. But after he went, we saw Deputy Defense Minister Timur Ivanov get 13 years in prison. He was also faced with a $1.2 million bribe. That's because he stole about 4 billion rubles, about $50 million, from military contracts. Now, aside from that, the court stripped him of his rank and his medals and his assets. Another general, Yuri Kuznetsov, he once headed the Defense Ministry's personnel. Today, he's in jail. Investigators have frozen over $6.1 million in his assets. The purge now is reaching the highest level, and the people closest to Shoigu. It's Shoigu's branch, his group, which was opposed to the FSB, that's currently being wiped out. The removal leaves the Defense Ministry structurally hollow, and it leaves the FSB in command. But this is the key. The FSB is not acting as an investigator. It is acting as a conqueror. The FSB's objective here is to make sure that it controls all the assets in Russia, all the sources for income. And today, the Ministry of Defense has a lot. Remember, about 41% of Russia's budget is going to this war. Imagine how many contracts they can give their own friends and their relatives. Even Vladimir Putin is in on it. Who is a new Deputy Defense Minister? No one other than his own cousin. Again and again, we see everyone who wants to make money, it knows to be over at the Ministry of Defense. And that's why the FSB is taking over. The FSB, which... See, this is what happens when you do videos in a war zone. Second time in 2 days. But we continue. Now, the Duma passed a law back in 2025, this summer, which allows the FSB to have its own prisons. And that's why today they're able to hold suspects for long periods of time. They're able to do this without using the Ministry of Justice. This means they don't have to go through the courts. They could keep everything secret. But that's exactly what you want when you're trying to do a purge. You have to make sure that things are secret and that you have no oversight. But none of this is happening truly in a vacuum. What we see today is that the Russian state is broke. And because it's broke, the FSB is forced, one could say, to go in and steal from the other ministries. Consider this. The FSB is historically been involved in things like rackets and other sort of criminal activity. But today in Russia, the average price of Russia's Urals crude has fallen to about $54 per barrel. That's 30% decline year over year. But it's catastrophic for the federal budget of Russia. That requires a break-even price of about $90 per barrel. So as a direct result, Russia's oil and gas revenues dropped 27% in October. Today, the government is trying to get all the money it can out of things like the National Wealth Fund. But internationally, things are looking worse for the Russians. Consider the Russian oil giant Lukoil. It declared force majeure on its massive project inside of Iraq. This happened after all the payments to the company were halted. The Iraqis simply fear sanctions by the Americans. Look at China. Even state-owned refineries today are halting all Russian oil purchases. They are afraid of being hit with secondary sanctions by the Americans. This has all triggered a total distrust in the Russian public. According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, the distrust in the Russian public is spreading. That's why Russian long-term bank deposits, they've locked for over 1 year, and they've collapsed to just 7% of all deposits. Meanwhile, short-term 3-month deposits have soared to 33% of all holdings. What do you make of that? The bank doesn't have cash. This is a classic quiet bank run. It signals that the public does not trust that the banks or the economy will be stable in the long term. People don't want to leave their money in the bank. They want it in their hands. And that's despite the fact that inflation is so bad that today, though the official inflation is about 9%, mortgage rates have exploded. Sberbank Russia, well, it's charging nearly 30% now. But gasoline shortages are also spreading across the country in over 20 regions. Today, again and again, we see that the capital flight is also worsening in Russia. This quarter alone, it's estimated that more than $4 billion fled the country. But today, there's something else going on. It's been accelerated by Ukraine, and that's internal collapse. The attacks by Ukraine are causing a humiliation across Russia, and that is a pretext that the FSB uses to launch its arrest. But just look at some of these recent attacks. There is a lot of reasons for Putin to be humiliated. Ukraine launched a series of long-range attacks against critical infrastructure. But there's something else. Look at the attack in Tagnarok. There, the substation that was hit, it left the entire area in the dark. Look at the attack in Belgorod. At the Luch power plant, another 20,000 residents are left in the dark. This strike reportedly also hit the plant's gas turbines. Now, why that's important? Gas turbines are something they got from the West. Today, due to sanctions, they won't be getting more. Look at the Voronezh region. We saw also the power plant that was struck there. We saw that Ukraine struck the Saratov oil refinery. That refinery alone can process 7 million tons of oil per year. All these attacks, including the one at the Sea Oil Terminal in Fedosia, are just stacking up, one attack after another. Just in the past few days, we've seen a phenomenal amount of attacks by Ukraine inside of Russia. And yet, the news never talks about that. It talks about Pokrovsk. Again and again, we talk about the abandoned town of Pokrovsk. Why don't we talk about the attacks inside of Russia? Why don't they make the Western press? Look at Crimea. Look at the degradation of the air defense there. Ukrainian special operations destroyed an S-400 air defense near Uyutny. Look at the attack on the 18th Army's ammunition depot near Udachny. We see one attack after another. Look at the attack in Zhenkoy. We saw the attack on the substation there. Look at the other nodes that we saw attacked in Melitopol, Zhenkoy, Simferopol, one after another. Ukraine today is taking the war to Russia. These losses, the fact that Russia is not winning, is causing more and more humiliation. But be sure, there is no general in Moscow with a plan of how to turn things around. Quite the opposite. Everybody knows it's about to get worse. Look at all of the meat grinder activity that we see from the Russian military. Look at the fact, though, that today it's gotten even worse for them. Look at gas gangrene, which is now spreading. It's a fast-acting, flesh-eating infection, which really has not been seen since World War II. But today, it's become normal. It's been seen with its 100% mortality rate in the Russian troops. But look what Atesh, which is a partisan group, reports about this. It says that commanders near Pokrovsk have totally disbanded their medical evacuation units. These soldiers, which some of them are doctors, others are EMTs, are being reassigned to be storm groups, and they will assault as infantry. What's incredible is that today we see that the wounded soldiers from Russia are left with no support. They just die from blood loss or hypothermia. But everywhere we look, we see that Russia is failing. Everything it does to try to make things better, just make it worse. Look at the Russian hedgehog cages they put on their tanks. These tanks, they put strain on the transmissions. They make the tanks inoperable after about 10 kilometers or 6 miles of use. More than that, it obstructs the optics of the tanks and makes the turrets impossible to use. How is this in any way a benefit to the soldiers stuck inside the tank? But today, everybody sees this. Russia's experienced elites, they're in jail. Its expert class is being killed, and the Russian military-industrial complex is just falling apart. You all saw the Ka-226 helicopter that crashed in Dagestan. Incredibly enough, that was the senior leadership of a critical Russian plant. Specifically, this is a plant that was making avionics, the electric systems that are used for Russia's fighter jets. That single crash gutted the brain trust of a vital supplier of the Russian military. So today, Russia, it's losing its engineers. It's arresting its generals. It must do something to improve the situation. And again, it chooses the worst options possible. They have just passed a law called Tortuga. That law bans the extradition or deportation of any foreign national who signs a military contract. That means that now any criminal can flee to Russia and sign up for the army, and he will be shielded for life from the ability to be extradited. Today, it means that the scum of the world will all descend on Moscow. But this rot is at the very heart of why Russia is dying. Look how they are essentially abducting people and sending them to Alabuga, which is the plant that they have for making drones. What are they doing there? Well, they go down to over 40 countries in Africa and recruited people, mostly women, and they brought them there. These women did not think they were going to be assembling drones. They thought they were going to go study. Some thought they were going to get jobs in normal places. But in fact, they're assembling drones. But Russia has to lie to foreigners. It has to invite criminals, because who else is going to go to Russia? Today, the elite are panicking. They see that the economic collapse is fueling the social rot across Russia. We've seen in the case of Khakassia, residents report a total social breakdown as the coal industry is displacing the farmers. According to one person, quote, more than half the population has become alcoholic. The youth have hung themselves. That's how things are today in Russia. That's how well things are going. It is a total disaster. So what does Russia do? What can it do to stop this disaster? Well, rest assured, the police in Moscow, they arrested eco-activists for the crime of making a video appeal to Putin so that he knew how the environment of Russia was doing. God forbid there's a video asking Putin to protect the environment of Russia. But that's the most they can do. What more can they do? How can they stop the infighting, this final proof of the regime's paralysis? The FSB is busy purging the military. The state's grip on the home front is failing, and that's why Ukraine's military intelligence reports that partisans are now acting with impunity. Look at the case of Stерлitamak. Teams there burnt equipment on 3 different communications towers. Near Vologda, a railway relay cabinet was also destroyed. It stopped all traffic in all directions. The Atesh partisan group sabotaged tracks near occupied Simferopol. It halted all the military supply trains. Today, the security services are too busy fighting with each other, fighting with the military, to be able to protect Russia. But ultimately, this is how autocracies die. Not by revolution, but by implosion. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel, like this video, leave your comments below, share it with others, and consider becoming a channel member. And please do see the first comment below that's pinned so that you can make a matched donation to help Ukrainian soldiers get life-saving drones. As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.